one of the lovely things I find about working here is because it's privately owned and it's been in this family for hundreds of years, there's a real warmth to the place, and each owner has put their own character in it. It has been used for cultivating vegetables since the 1600s, and the layout has remained mostly unchanged. And so it's a working garden, and all the vegetables we produce get used. They get used in the kitchen, in the castle, and sometimes we provide to restaurants in the town as well. So it's very much a living garden and a working garden.
Thanks to the Gulf Stream, there's rarely frost in Ireland and rarely sweltering heat. Perfect conditions for life to burgeon, inland and along the coast. Off to County Cork in the southwest. In the fishing village of Baltimore, Cornelius Bohane has been up and about since 4 in the morning. He lives from the sea. He's a shrimp fisher, like his father and grandfather before him. But times have changed. For 10 months of the year, Cornelius works on a large commercial trawler with huge drag nets. It's almost impossible to make any money with a small traditional fishing boat. Except in late summer, when it's time to harvest shrimps, right here in the bay.
I've been here all my life, so I'm quite happy to live here. It's nice to start early in the morning and come out here in the harbour, because it's very relaxing as well. There's no pressure on you. You do it at your own pace, and you're still making income out of it.
The few remaining shrimp fishermen of Baltimore have each staked out their domain. The techniques of shrimp fishing haven't changed for centuries. One key skill is patience.
The principle is that you just put a header or a holding into the pot every day, and the shrimp actually, they attract the shrimp feed on them. So you actually put them into a holder there in the centre, and the fish that attract the shrimp, then the shrimp actually come in on each end.
Every day during the 2-month season, Cornelius sets out his pots and collects them the next morning. The conditions here are excellent. The shrimp like the rocky shore. It takes Cornelius till the afternoon to empty the pots. The vegetation is lush in the south and southwest of Ireland. Green pasture as far as the eye can see. Ireland is famous for its delicious milk. There isn't really any secret. For much of the year, the cows are out grazing most of the time and only come indoors for milking. And they're not bred to yield enormous quantities of milk. The farmer Tom Ferguson has 110 milk cows. They graze on his 160 hectares of pasture. Because the climate is so mild, they rarely have to find shelter, unlike their cousins on the European mainland. The plentiful rain ensures the grass is lush. It's not surprising that their milk is tastier than that of cows who live in a shed. The Irish have started to do more with their milk, beyond making butter. Tom Ferguson and his wife Gina are pioneers in making artisanal cheese. At their dairy, they process 3,000 litres of milk a day. Starter cultures are added to the vats of milk. Gina Ferguson spent years living in Spain and France, where she learned the art of cheese making.
I married a cheesemaker. I had the milk and she had the skill. So.
Of Europe, really, right on the sea, is it's very pure land, and the milk is extraordinary. It's so good. It was impossible not to experiment with cheese making. But that's all we did to start. We experimented.
That was 3 decades ago. Since then, their Gubeen cheese, named after their farm, has become a well-known brand. Half an hour after the starter cultures are added, the milk has thickened and gelled into curds. It's then cut with a long blade. Tom and Gina can hardly keep up with the demand for their aromatic soft cheese, favoured by gourmets across Ireland and in continental Europe as well, even in France. The curds are then placed in moulds and weights put on top to squeeze out the whey. Then they're left alone for 12 hours. By the next morning, the wheels of cheese will have taken form.
It's the grasses, the key to it. It makes it so competitive because there's no feedlots. We're out day and night for 9 months of the year.
We have the Gulf Stream. So this corner of West Cork and some parts of Kerry have this remarkable warmth. So early grass.
Yeah,
It's a
that
gift.
is the key.
Yeah, it's a gift.
Back to the Bay of Baltimore. Cornelius Bohane's work is almost done for today. He's harvested his shrimp and put his 300 pots back in the water. The seals are used to seeing him pass by. Cornelius is heading to the next port along the coast to deliver his catch to the wholesaler. It's been a good day, the pots were full. 41 kilograms of shrimp. Cornelius gets between 13 and 16 euros a kilo. The shrimp are shipped to Spain. In 3 days' time, they'll be on sale there. Demand in Ireland is weak. Now Cornelius can really call it a day. We head further west along the coast, past rugged cliffs, ruined castles, and verdant landscapes. This corner of Ireland is particularly exposed to the warm Gulf Stream. It's the perfect location for a bold botanical experiment. Garinish Island in the sheltered harbour of Glengarriff in Bantry Bay enjoys a mild and humid microclimate in which all kinds of exotic flora flourish. The Italian garden is the centerpiece of the small island. Many of the plants and trees come from the Mediterranean and even hotter regions. At the start of the 20th century, the island was a bleak rock with just a thin layer of boggy soil. Then a Scottish businessman bought the island and commissioned the English architect Harold Peto to turn it into a splendid, lush garden paradise. That involved shipping tons of soil from the mainland and planting pines to protect the delicate flowers and bushes from the strong winds. Garinish Island, which now belongs to the state, has become a major attraction. The range of flowers and plants may be impressive, but unexpected problems have arisen. And not just here. Some of the non-native plants spread rapidly, especially the common rhododendron, which is native to the Iberian Peninsula and the Black Sea region. It's become a pest and is threatening to overwhelm the native flora. It's already changed the landscape across Ireland. Competition among species can be found everywhere. But here on the southern Irish coast, the various contenders have staked out their claims with considerable success. There's teeming life along the shore. Plants and animals here have specialized and adapted to their surroundings. The marine biologist Tom O'Byrne has been conducting research here for years. He's fascinated by this vibrant microcosm.
Oh, there's so much life here. But the point is that it's hostile to quite a lot of different forms of life, all right. But the forms of life that chose to live on the different zones have perfected themselves to live happily in those zones with no competition from other forms of life. And competition is one of the great problems on the land, where things are always struggling to get to the light and they're trying to flatten each other out, and there's a struggle. Here, the forms of life, as they emerged from the sea hundreds of millions of years ago, about 400 million years ago, they found themselves a niche and they established themselves there, and there's no competition.
Though this might look like an unfriendly place to live, in fact, many species feel right at home here.
Well, this area is a wonderful example of all the different zones here. So you've got the land-based flowering plants up above, the lichens on the rocks below them, and the splash zone there with very little on it. It gets too hot in the summer in the sun. And then you've got the channel wrack. This channel wrack is all only living on that zone all the way around the coast of all of the country and all of Northern Europe, really. So, and then you come down a step and you're into the spiral racks, and the spiral racks have about 1 metre or 2 going all along below that level. And in this case here, we're down to rock with barnacles, and barnacles are actually crustacea. They're related to crabs and lobsters and so on, believe it or not. And these fellas, they stick their back to a rock, and they've got a little trapdoor that they open when the water's over this place, and they put their legs out and grab food as it goes past, and then the tide goes down and they pull their legs in and close the thing and go to sleep until the next tide comes in, and that's their life.
These barnacles in the intertidal zone are very clever, and by closing their shells, they protect themselves from drying out. Much of what lives here is also good to eat.
So essentially, we're going to have the water coming in. The tide has turned at the moment. So this is where the kelp zone is all around here. There's a bit of kelp here. That's common kelp, digitata, as it's called. So that's laminaria. So they don't have roots. The plant actually absorbs its nutrient from the water. So that's like an anchor at the bottom there. Oh, here's another one here, and this is sugar kelp. Sugar kelp is something that you can eat as well. Of course, you can deep fry these fronds. They're also called the poor man's weatherglass because they change colour with the barometric changes in the weather and so on. The humidity changes their colour.
Tom O'Byrne's enthusiasm for this special world at the water's edge is boundless.
So there are a lot of crabs living in these areas. There we are. They're, whoops, he's trying to bite me. But that's a male. So that's the female, and he was minding her underneath like this. She was probably going to shed her skin shortly, and she'll carry her eggs in that area there. This area here actually lifts off. You see, look, see, it lifts off, and the eggs are all packed in there. Little fish, and they live out of water, under the seaweed, So it's a little. So these little fellas are quite happy out of water for hours and hours. I put them into the water here.
The tide is coming in, and soon this colourful microcosm will disappear from view. Teeming life can be found where you least expect it. This may look like a seashell, but in fact it's an edible snail.
If you're hungry and you're on the rocky seashore, taking it out of the shell, little rinse, and they're rather like oysters, but chewier. They're very nice to eat. And half a dozen of these when you're walking along the shore, and you don't need to go to the restaurant later on. They're sufficient. Very nice to eat. Slightly chewy. You don't need pepper and salt. They've already got their good flavour.
We're back at Tom and Gina Ferguson's farm. While the cows placidly graze in the morning sun, the cheese dairy is a hive of activity. Overnight, the whey has drained out of the curds, which are now firm and can be tipped out of the molds. The wheels of cheese are then bathed in brine. The rind develops, and the salt suffuses the cheese and contributes to the flavor. Gina and Tom have been perfecting their cheese-making skills for 3 decades now. Right from the start, it was more than just a business venture.
What was missing out of Irish culture? We had the poetry, we had the painters, we had the theatre, we had our culture, but we didn't have a food culture. And for reasons that I'll leave you to imagine, when it happened, there were 4 or 5 of us back in the mid-70s making cheese for our own reasons in parts of West Cork and Kerry. And this was really just immediately accepted. So it was accepted, it was welcomed. It was the piece of the puzzle that was missing in Irish culture, Irish food, real Irish food. Yeah.
The Fergusons now make 3 tons of cheese a week. Each cheese is washed with brine and white wine every day for 2 weeks. That creates the distinctive aroma. And all kinds of people enjoy Gubbeen cheese nowadays.
Driving tractors,
Yes.
that have huge cheese sandwiches.
Fishermen going off to sea,
Yeah.
children now going to school,
And then
have their sandwiches too.
Very posh dinner parties on the other side.
And you know, the White House. Every Patrick's Day, Gubbeen goes to the White House. We have a very strange client base.
Irish dairy products enjoy an excellent reputation, and clearly not just at home. A 3-hour drive west from Gubbeen Farm is Valentia Island in County Kerry. The Atlantic Isle is the westernmost inhabited place in Ireland. It's windy and the climate is bracing. But here too there are sheltered areas and botanical wonders. In the gardens of Glenleam House, the plants and trees come from Japan, Australia, New Zealand and South America. This Chilean myrtle has attained record dimensions. Here at the northeastern corner of Valentia Island, the tender exotics are protected from Atlantic gales by trees and high ground. This spot has the mildest microclimate in all of Ireland. ferns like these usually grow in tropical or subtropical climes. A jungle of Tasmanian tree ferns, the tallest in Europe. Giant rhubarb from Chile, banana bushes, palm trees, myrtle from the Mediterranean, agaves from Mexico are among the many exotic species that make Valentia Island a place of delight for botanists. It's hard to believe that this luxuriant subtropical jungle is located on a windswept Irish island in the North Atlantic. On now to the old head of Kinsale. It's a promontory jutting out into the Atlantic in County Cork. It's pounded by the waves and by the salty wind. Yet it's the site of another ambitious project. A spectacular and exclusive golf links has been laid out here. As a consequence, access to the headland has been restricted, which has led to protests by local people. The location presents the greenkeeper Neil Deasy with special challenges. It's his job to keep the course and the grass in perfect condition. Every day he checks the fairways, the grass and the soil.
We really are fighting against Mother Nature. It's a constant battle against the elements. A constant battle against the elements. But, you know, every year that goes by, we're starting to become, you know, better at it, you know. So, yeah, we're getting there.
In stormy weather, crashing waves and strong wind send salty seawater up onto the golf course. The salt can destroy the grass. Neil checks the salt content of the earth every morning. If it's too high, he and his team have to work hard to lower it again, using rather simple means.
Water, just basic water. and just try and flush that salt through the root zone, get it down through the sand and the greens, just moving out of the drainage, and that's our best tool here. You know, if we get a salt storm coming off the ocean, if it's raining with that salt storm, it's not too bad. But if it's a dry salt storm where it's just wind and salt coming off the sea with no rain, this place can burn up pretty quickly. So that's our greatest ally is water.
Another simple but effective means to help keep the grass green is to mix sand into the soil to make it looser. The greenkeeper has 72 hectares to look after. 19 gardeners lavish their attention on the golf links. That's a lot of work to keep the few golfers happy who can afford to play here. Neil Deasy is proud of his perfect grass. At each teeing ground, it's mown to a height of exactly 3 millimeters.
You can see here we have a different type of colour sand going down here. And what that actually is, it's a core hole. It's an area where we took out a core, or we aerified the green, and we put on a layer of sand, and the sand has worked its way down into the hole, and that just basically helps with getting air down into the root zone, and that in turn helps with breaking down this thatch layer, and it just makes a better growing environment for the grass to grow in. Happy with that. I think it's a good sample.
The contrast is worth savouring. Manicured fairways above, wild nature below. Rare species of birds nest in the rocks, and grey seals have plenty to eat here. The Atlantic also provides food for the grass up on the Old Head golf links. Seaweed makes an excellent fertilizer. It's rich in nutrients such as nitrogen, potassium, phosphate and magnesium. And it's all natural and organic. So it all comes together. Nature maintains the artifice of a golf course on a rocky promontory in the Atlantic. With water, sand and seaweed. The result, perfect lawns and fairways. Back now to wild nature. In Waterville in County Kerry, Kevin Brain is up at dawn to go fishing. He organises angling trips for tourists, but in his free time he also heads for the water. This is a good spot for sea angling. Cold water from the north meets the warmer Gulf Stream. So both cold water and warm water fish congregate here, about 80 species in all, and the angling season lasts well into autumn.
all the bass and the flounder, they come in when the sand is actually turning up. They come in looking for small crustaceans like little shrimps and worms and bits of razorfish, anything that's floating around. So they would be in rather shallow then, see. So conditions are not the best, but we'll give it a try. I prefer it with the bigger surf here. With the bigger surf, it'd be much better. The fish stay out that little bit deeper and a little bit. They're afraid to come in as well because the birds up above can come down and get them, like so.
The fish only come close to shore when the surf is up. When the water is calm, they stay away. So Kevin moves to a better spot. At this early hour, there's nobody about, even though this is a popular holiday destination. It's on the well-known Ring of Kerry tourist route. The area is thinly populated, and here there's little to show for the dozen years of Ireland's economic boom that ended with a crash in 2007. Kevin Brain used to be a miner in Wales, but moved here 3 decades ago just because it's so remote and peaceful.
Like I said, it's the amount of fish this year, it makes it really special. I mean, look at this for beauty. It's absolutely amazing. There's no factories here or anything like that. It's still unspoiled. And I hope it stays that way, guys. With these huge hotels, I mean, you can go anywhere down in Spain, and there's one thing we don't get here, we don't get the sun as much as they do in Spain. Otherwise, I think it'd be huge hotels around everywhere.
Here at the end of the bay, wrasse and pollock are the main quarry. They like to swim here among the rocks in the clear water. In recent years, the fish populations have been changing, and that's because of global warming.
With the temperature of the water warming up, we see a few triggerfish here, gilt-edged bream, another one from the Mediterranean. So the water temperature is definitely rising all the time. We seem to be seeing different species of fish now almost every year coming from the Med. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That's what happens. Only a pollock, but still. Here we go. Took my eye off the rod for a minute, and that's what happens. Very nicely hooked. Gently unhook him. Little kiss. Mwah.
For Kevin Brain, this pollock is too small to take home. With such a plentiful supply, he can afford to be choosy. Back to Gubbeen Farm. After the cheeses have been washed and turned for 2 weeks, they're left to mature for a further 4 weeks. Gubbeen cheese is sold at farmers' markets across Ireland, as well as in fine food shops in France and Germany. For the Fergusons, making cheese is more than just a business. It has to do with the fertile land and their sense of home. Almost everything they eat is sourced locally, from their own farm or their neighbours.
A lid, that would be like a table.
It really has a lot to do in Ireland with our identity. I think now we have our own food culture and we're very proud of that. I think at last perhaps Europe is aware that we do have a vulnerability in our food cultures. If we don't fight to save them, we'll all be eating turkey nuggets We need to be careful of these little foods, and I think there is a sense of protectiveness all across cultures now, and certainly across economies. People who will spend £100 on a bottle of wine are also thinking, well, maybe we should buy local cheese too. It's a nice time to be a small farmer.
The Fergusons are part of a gentle food revolution, and the revolutionaries are small farmers. Slow food, authentic